The Blue Jackets are going to be facing the Buffalo Sabres, who might end up being the surprise of the regular season. We've got a couple more training camp cuts, and could Patrik Laine start the season at center? We're going to talk about all of that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Your Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster. That's my co-host, Hayden Heilshorn, and it feels like it's been a minute since we've recorded an episode together, but we're both back, and we're here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and ours, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen or your first watch of the day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube, where we are getting closer and closer to 600 YouTube subscribers, which is really exciting. So if you haven't hit subscribe, please feel free to do so and maybe win some Blue Jackets tickets. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we get into any of that, Blue Jackets have a game tomorrow. Feels like it's been a... Preseason is weird because obviously the games are super spread out, but Blue Jackets are in... nationwide. Nope. This is for a look behind the curtain to our wonderful listeners. I said this exact same thing on the first take of this episode, so we're just gonna keep pushing through that. The Blue Jackets are in Buffalo tomorrow, and then they are in nationwide on Wednesday. And I am going to get that right the next time I mention this. But in Buffalo, 3 p.m. game could get a little interesting. I'm expecting some more bubble performances, maybe a couple more veteran guys getting some reps, but I imagine we will probably see a very similar lineup to what we saw in St. Louis this week. So I guess let's start there. What did you see? Because obviously you did a little bit of a game recap for our wonderful everydayers. What do you want to see in Buffalo that you didn't see against St. Louis?
Wow. I'd like to see a little bit more competition out of guys like Eric Robinson. I feel like his spot on the team is a little bit up in the air right now. And if that spot is down to him or Emil Bemstrom for that third, fourth line left winger, then he's going to have to pick it up. Eric Robinson is, because he didn't even register a shot in the last game that he played against St. Louis. He didn't look like himself. And, you know, a lot of guys in the preseason haven't necessarily looked like themselves. It's preseason. I don't really expect them to come out guns a-blazing, and kind of, you know, that it hurts the other guys knowing that most of these NHL players might not be going full go. Although if you watched the Knights and Kings game last night, I mean,
someone was going full go. I don't know.
I believe it was I want to get his name right. And give me a second. But Mark Stone took a hit from some young buck on the Kings last night, and it was Mark Stone had a few words to say after that, and it was entertaining. So, but anyway, preseason is just kind of this weird limbo where it's like half the guys are playing, you know, full throttle, and then maybe the other half are just like slow down, you know.
Skate. Yeah, it's such a weird beast. I did look it up. It is Hayden Hodgson.
Yes, shout out Hayden. Yeah, come on.
That almost murdered Mark Stone last night, and Mark Stone was very upset about it. But it happens, man.
It does. It does happen. Yeah, these guys are trying to make rosters. So, like, you can't – I'm sure maybe Mark Stone sitting down later that night was like, you know, I was once a young buck like that too, trying to make a roster. So, but – to just, you know, taking all that away, this game in Saturday is still the bottom 6 tryouts is really what it is, because, and it's sad because the defensemen are really stealing the show. Like Denton Matejchuk, like he looks really good. Corson Kuhlman's looks awesome. Like there's multiple players in the D-core really that look fantastic. Nick Blankenberg is himself, which is a good thing because when he plays his game and when he's playing fully confident, he's so much fun to watch. But it's the bottom six tryouts, man. And I think Alexander Texier, who has gotten a lot of love in camp since coming back from Europe. He was in Europe last year, took a year off from NHL play, but he looks even better than I remembered him. So I think he'll comfortably fit in the top four, if not middle, or in the top six, if not middle six, depending on where that shakes out. So yeah, it all comes down to really, in my mind, it comes down to Bemstrom, Robinson, and Chinakhov. And Chinakhov didn't play against the Blues. So that makes me feel like he's probably either going to play in Buffalo, and it's going to kind of be the reverse of like, yeah, some guys played in St. Louis, but some of those other guys competing for that bottom six are going to play here in Buffalo. I don't know. We haven't had a roster yet. So at the time that we're recording this, we don't have a roster, but I'm really looking at Bemstrom and Robinson to answer your question in a long-winded way. I'm looking at those two because they're the two that need to have a good preseason.
Yeah, here's the thing is I keep going and looking at the Blue Jackets roster and I'm like, right, I've got my 13 forwards, and then I'll look like one player down and be like, oh dang, forgot all about him,
Yeah.
and it's tough because like you say, there's maybe 8 to 10 guys competing for 6 probable roster spots. And like that's not even getting into, does Jack Roslovic get a roster spot just because he's a veteran? Sean Crowley, I feel like, is probably locked in a roster spot as that fourth line center. But then you look at, well, can guys like Dmitry Voronkov unseat him? Can guys like I'm blanking on his name, Hunter McCown, who you're a big fan of, there's so many guys that could make this roster, and I wouldn't be surprised if we do see very few games from veteran players and from the top 6 because they've got all of these decisions to make. The defense is going to be interesting as well, I think. I think probably they will continue to look at Matejchuk. They will continue to look at guys like Peak, guys like Boquist, guys like Blankenberg. Jake Bean is out for a while. And I believe Igor Chinakhov is banged up at the minute as well. Correct? Like, feel free, commenters, to correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I feel like I remember seeing that he was banged up. So that might make sense as to why he hasn't been in the lineup recently. But I agree, he's definitely one of those guys that is very much in the mix for me. And we'll see where it goes.
There's some other guys.
Is another really great name for a guy that I think has looked really good in the preseason, but is going to have to fight his way back on the roster because there's just too dang many players.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys that has had a really solid camp. And I think he just needs to land on the score sheet a little bit more for him to really stick out, because that was his big issue, Jay, is he was never on the score sheet this past year in Columbus. He played 60 games and registered single digit in points, I believe. So not a good past year out of Cole Sillinger. He played well when he was in the AHL. He looked like he looked like he wasn't, slow or behind his peers at all.
It is amazing what consistent ice time and line mates will do to a player, And so I think obviously there is some blame. Blame's the wrong word. Accountability, I think, for Cole Sillinger, and I think he knows that he wasn't very good last season, but I'm really excited to see what he could do with, hopefully, consistent line mates, consistent ice time, not, playing 17 minutes one night and 8 minutes the next night and then getting scratched, and then a revolving lineup of, being on the wing and then being on the center. And, so Cole Sillinger is a guy I'm looking at to have a big preseason, and he hasn't quite hit it yet, but he looks good. Like you said, I'd like him to find the score sheet. I liked his brother's goal against the Penguins. I thought that was fun.
That was
and there's got to be
nice.
some gentle ribbing in the group chat about that. But I actually wanted to talk a little bit as well about their opponent. And there's not really like a ton of point in doing all of this super sophisticated analysis about what will likely be, again, like the Blue Jackets, kind of a mishmash roster of some good young guys, some veterans, some guys fighting to make the team. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Sabres because I think they're going to be a really interesting team this season. So we're going to do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, though, I've got to tell you guys about a new sponsor, and that is DoorDash. And if you are anything like me, you go to the store, you get your groceries, you get home, and then immediately look in the cupboard and remember what you didn't buy. Every single time. I cannot do a full grocery shop ever. I always get home and I'm like, oh, I forgot eggs. I forgot to get like olive oil. I forgot to get cheese. Like, I am a nightmare for it. But luckily, DoorDash does not just bring you food from your favorite restaurants. You can get grocery delivery from them as well. They've got thousands of grocery stores to choose from, and you can find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You're going to get what you ordered, or DoorDash will fix it. So all you have to do is sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. And with a Dash Pass membership, you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders, easy substitutions right in the app, and great customer support. DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. And even better, you can get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use code LOCKED, LOCKED, at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's $20 off, up to 50% off. I'm going to start that one again. That's 50% off up to $20. No minimum subtotal, zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKED. Don't forget, that's code LOCKED. Once again, LOCKED for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We are talking training camp, we are talking preseason, and we're talking Buffalo Sabres, which is not something we usually do here on Locked On Blue Jackets. But for the national show yesterday, we were talking about power rankings and what the Atlantic Division is going to look like. And my co-host over there, Hunter Hodes, host of Locked On Penguins, and I kind of realized the Buffalo Sabres could be a really interesting playoff team this season. They've got a lot of moving parts. They've got a lot of guys that look like the Blue Jackets, like they're all going to hit at the same time. And I think this might be a really interesting series of games because the Blue Jackets play them tomorrow afternoon. And then I believe their next game is also against the Sabres, but at Nationwide, correct? They don't have a game in between those two games. So we'll get a nice long look at probably most of the guys that will be suiting up for the Sabres. It's probably going to be a veteran-heavy lineup tomorrow because that's how preseason works. You play your veterans at home because people want to see them. You play your kids on the road. So we'll see, a good mix, I think. I don't know how familiar you are with the Sabres roster.
Very, actually.
Anyone on that roster that you are kind of excited to see, but I think for me, someone I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to is, well, first of all, Owen Power, noted best friend of current Blue Jacket Kent Johnson, who really blossomed last season into a very good young defenseman. But I'm really excited to see Devon Levi, who is probably the best goaltending prospect in the NHL, is probably going to be the starters for the Sabres this season. And I think if they do make the playoffs, it'll probably be in no small part due to him. And I think that's going to be exciting. Blue Jackets fans know what it's like to have a long playoff drought. It's been 13 years for the Sabres, I believe. Maybe longer, maybe 17 years. I don't know math off the top of my head, but it's got to be exciting to be a Sabres fan this season, right?
Oh, Jay, I just looked it up because are we talking about them potentially being a playoff team this year? You need to figure out where they were at last year. I had to remind myself this one. They were 1 point behind Florida. 1 point. They finished one spot behind the Florida Panthers, who, if anybody remembers, went to the Stanley Cup final last year. So they're dangerously close to being a team that can make the playoffs and maybe even go on a run. I think they have tons of young players, but they also have some veteran players that I've really enjoyed watching throughout their careers. I'm talking about guys like Jeff Skinner, Connor Clifton is with them.
God, sorry to interrupt. I hate that Jeff Skinner is a veteran player because in my head, he's still 21,
I know, yeah. Yeah, I know. And but then they also have a lot of really exciting young players. Like Dylan Cousins is another one of those guys that he's so much fun to watch. And I can't believe I've even gone this far without mentioning Tage Thompson and the monster that guy is. He is the biggest dude. I was just gonna say the biggest threat to the Blue Jackets tomorrow night, but that should go without saying. He is one of the biggest
He's
physically
enormous.
biggest players on the ice. He is really good. He scored 5 goals against the Jackets the one night
God,
that they
don't remind us.
I'm sorry, but he was on my fantasy team at the time, and we were out of the playoffs, and I was loving it. So I didn't really care about the Jackets at that point in the season. I was on the tank for Connor Bedard. Shoot for the stars, land on the moon, got Adam Fantilli. Here we are. So yes, it is going to be a fun game, Jay, because I think the Sabres are a team that's like a year ahead of the Jackets.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like the Jackets could find themselves in a similar situation to where the Sabres have been the last couple of years in the Atlantic, which is just going to be right around the middle, struggle against those top-tier teams, but really maybe even grab some wins every now and then. But I wouldn't be surprised, Jay, if the Sabres kind of land in the top 3 in that division and we see the Tampa Bay Lightning fall off. The Tampa Bay Lightning are an aging roster. They don't know what they're going to do with Steven Stamkos.
I also don't know.
Vasilevsky's
You've just, for context purposes, Hayden has literally just gotten in the front door from work, so probably hasn't seen Twitter in the past few hours.
Something happened to
Tampa Bay Lightning
Vasi,
are gonna be
didn't it?
without Andrei Vasilevsky to start the season. He just had surgery today.
There you
So,
go.
for my money, the Atlantic is wide open. The Senators are improving. If they get good goaltending from Korpisalo, they're going to be in the conversation. Florida's probably going to be as good. I think it's a given that we'll lock Toronto in as one of those top 3 teams. But yeah, the Buffalo, if Tampa Bay struggles without Vasilevsky, which I assume they will because their backup, I believe, is a guy called Jonas Johansson, who is an AHL goalie, it could get interesting in the Atlantic. And I would love to see the Sabres make the playoffs. I think that would be fun. I think they're a really exciting team, and they're only going to get better. And I think, again, Blue Jacket fans should rally behind the Sabres, as they are also a team that has kind of been one of the laughing stocks of the league over the past kind of 10, 15 years, maybe. So in solidarity with that, I think we should adopt the Sabres as our, Atlantic Division team, so to speak.
Yeah, that's cool with me. I mean, I've always enjoyed watching the Sabres play because, one, I think they have one of the best team brands in the NHL. I just think the logo's cool. Being from Buffalo is cool to me. It's such a gritty city. So it's I love the Sabres. I do. I love them. I love their roster. Like I just said, I think it's very similar to the Blue Jackets. Tons of young players and sprinkled by a few veterans, but they're really good. Like they've been drafting really well over the last few years, and it's starting to show. Yeah, I'm okay with adopting them as Team Atlantic. I'm cool with that on behalf of the podcast. Yeah, I can roll with that. Let's see how these 2 games go because do you remember a couple years ago when they tried to force the Blue Jackets and Sabres rivalry a little bit? Like they were just kind of they were like, no, you don't get to be the Penguins rival. That's the Caps. We'll let you be the Sabres rival because they don't really have anybody. They're out in the middle. And we're like, what? They put us on Wednesday night rivalry night and stuff. And it was
they did try real hard for a minute there. It was very funny.
It is. But, and honestly, if the teams played in the same division, it would be really fun because they're so close. I think the cities are only a 5.5, 6 hour drive between each other. So very doable drive. It's one that I've always wanted to make, but, yeah, this game's gonna be fun. Do you have any idea who we might see play backup tomorrow for, I assume it's probably gonna be either Tarasov or Merzlikins to start. They like to wheel out one of those veteran goalies to start the game, but I'd love to see some Pavel Chyan again. I really like
my guess was going to be Pavel Chyan, and I thought we might see some more of Arundel as well. It feels like they're getting a good long look at Arundel in the preseason, which I like. But yeah, Tarasov, I don't think we'll see just yet. I think he's still recovering, and honestly, I would rather sit him the entire preseason than aggravate that. But we could see a little bit of Elvis. I think Elvis has been a perfectly acceptable goalie through his limited preseason action so far. But you've got to think that management wants to get a better look at him. do they want to get a better look at him in front of or behind, a probable mostly AHL lineup though? So I would expect Elvis will probably play in Nationwide, but I also wouldn't rule it out. But my guess would be Cheyenne and Dell, maybe Greaves. I've liked what Greaves has done so far in preseason, but it's going to be those three goalies, which actually segues pretty neatly into something else I wanted to touch on, which is the Blue Jackets that had a couple more training camp cuts. I believe they released defenseman Ben Roger from his PTO, and they also sent Nolan Lalonde back to the OHL. So Nolan Lalonde was the 6th goalie at the camp. He is an undrafted free agent that they signed last season, I think. He is only 19 years old, played at Traverse City, and I thought did pretty well for himself. So he's back in the OHL with I want to say the Erie Otters, but don't quote me on that. So we're going to be keeping an eye on him, because he could potentially be the backup in Cleveland by the end of the season, depending on how Erie's playoffs go, depending on how the Monsters do. So he's a guy to keep an eye on, but the Blue Jackets are now down to 5 goalies, 4 if you don't count Tarasov. So chances are we'll be seeing a little bit more of the top guys. So Elvis, really, we'll be seeing a little bit more of Elvis. For the last segment of this show, we're going to talk about Hayden's favorite topic, which is Patrik Laine has been playing center in a couple of practices. So we're going to talk about that and how excited Hayden is about it in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. So before we get into Patrik Laine at center, just a quick reminder: we haven't mentioned it in a couple of shows. We are doing a giveaway because we hit 500 YouTube subscribers. So thank you to everyone that has subscribed and everyone that is about to subscribe. And Hayden and I decided we should give something back to you guys because you guys rock. So if all you have to do is if you email us at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com, email us a screenshot that shows that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, and you're going to be entered into a drawing for 2 tickets to, I want to say it's the November 2nd Blue Jackets game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we've got a couple of tickets for that game. Email us once again, and you could win those tickets. So it's free hockey tickets. You lose nothing, Hit subscribe on YouTube. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be subscribed right now. You can subscribe and then email us. Like, it's open to basically everyone. So everyone that lives in the state of Ohio, I believe. We have some legal terms that I will put at the bottom of this episode, and we'll go from there. But if you want some tickets, go ahead and enter. We've had a couple of entries already, so subscribe and potentially win some tickets. Now on to the fun stuff, which is Patrik Laine has been skating at center again, which is interesting to me. How do we feel about this, Hayden?
I feel differently about it than when we talked about it over the summer, only because I'm starting to see Laine play with Fantilli a little bit, and I'm like, I kind of want to keep that going. Like, I don't want to break that up. And Fantilli should be playing center. I guess there could be a world where Laine would be the center and Fantilli be the winger, but that just doesn't make sense to me. No, like, we drafted Fantilli to be the next franchise center. Let's put him there. I'm okay with it still. I still don't think our center depth is great. However, as we've mentioned Cole Sillinger at the beginning of this episode, I'm starting to think that Cole Sillinger could be taking a step forward, and we're not going to get the same Cole that we got last year. Again, still hasn't really gotten on the score sheet as much as I'd like, but I think he's moving well. He's skating well. Looks like he's driving the offense rather than relying on his line mates to drive offense, which is a good thing. And then outside of that, you obviously got Boone Jenner, Jack Roslovic, and Sean Corrali. Like, I still think that those 2 guys are solid options. I think Jack Roslovic gets a lot of hate, and deservingly so. He doesn't, he doesn't excel at the small areas, but he gets shots on goal. He scores goals. So it's like he could be a really good 4th line center in this league still. But then you got Sean Corrali down there. So it's like, I don't know if the Blue Jackets are at a point right now where they need to try to force Laine at center. Maybe skate him out there a couple more times and always have him floating around. But I don't think the Blue Jackets need him to be playing center right now. That's how I feel. Again, we were in a different situation last year with this team when they had a million injuries, so that's why
They had
he
1.5 centers, yeah.
yeah. But Fantilli makes a difference, and I think those two are obviously have some chemistry on the ice together, so why would we want to break that up,
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall as well. I think I am not against Laine learning more about the center position. And then I saw a couple of tweets, and I don't remember who these belong to, so I'm very sorry for not crediting anyone. But I saw first of all, I saw someone say that we don't want to push Laine at center at the expense of our young developing centers, so like Cole Sillinger. Because if Laine goes to center, then that likely pushes Cole Sillinger to the wing, and I think he's going to be a very good middle six center for the Blue Jackets. Kent Johnson is another option at center, but I think he does work better as a winger. So that's something to bear in mind. However, something else that I hadn't thought of that someone on Twitter pointed out is, what if they can get Laine to a point where he can play center in overtime and be trusted to win a face-off, and they don't have to do that thing that they have been doing for like years now. It used to be Brandon Dubinsky and is now Boone Jenner, of someone winning the opening face-off and then skating like heck to the bench to get a more offensively minded player on. If they can trust Laine to win that opening overtime face-off, then I feel like that's going to open up a whole host of other things. So I agree. I don't necessarily think that they need to force the position on him, but I'm also of the opinion, and I just read a really good article about it on bluejackets.com by our friend Jeff Svoboda, that basically said they don't lose anything by making Laine more defensively responsible and giving him more, what's the word I want? More tools in his toolkit, so to speak. If that starts happening at the expense of like your young centers like Cole Sillinger, then I might have an issue with it. But as of right now, it's a really good B option. It's a really good plan B for this team, having another guy that can win faceoffs and another guy that knows how to back check effectively.
Oh yeah, and he is really good defensively too. I think the amount of times I'm watching a Blue Jackets game, Jay, and I see Patrik Laine lift somebody's stick and take the puck the other way, and it's just a little play that happens where I'm like, holy crap, that was amazing. Like that was really impressive what he just did. He just stripped the guy of the puck and turned into offense. Like, he's so good at that already that, yeah, I'm kind of at a point right now, and especially with training camp going on and watching guys like Hunter McCown, Josh Dunn, like I'm watching these two guys and I'm like, these guys could be center options like later in the year. Like, just get them a few more AHL games, like get them some NHL regular season games and small, controllable minutes, and maybe you could have something there. But or maybe do you move a guy like Eric Robinson to center? He's so fast and he can just be disruptive sometimes. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's a fun thing to play about and to experiment with. And then also like Alexander Texier has some center experience too.
Yes.
Do you give him more shots? Like, again, all totally on board with you when you say like you're cool with him getting reps. I'm the same. I'm cool with him getting reps, but I don't think the Blue Jackets need Patrik Laine at center right now. Like, I feel like the center depth, historically, very bad. But right now, I just want to see it play out first before I'm like, let's go back to that option. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like there was a couple of seasons ago, it would have been the first post-COVID bubble season. So that's what, the 2021 season that actually just happened in all of 2022 because it started in like January. And that was the season where the Blue Jackets, they looked at the roster and was like, wow, we have actual center depth. We just signed Mikko Koivu. We had Sean Corrali on the roster at that point, I believe. Pierre-Luc Dubois was there. And I can't remember for the life of me who our fourth center was. I assume it was probably Boone Jenner. But I was looking at this and like, wow, we have actual center depth for the first time in ages. And then obviously, by the end of the season, none of them were on the roster because they were all injured or whatever. But it feels a little bit like we're at that point now where looking at the guys that can play center, we've got Fantilli, Jenner can play center, Kuraly is a center. Roslovic can play center, but I think he's more effective on the wing. Cole Sillinger can play center. Kent Johnson could probably play a little bit of center, but again, I think he's better on the wing. Texier has some center experience. Dmitry Voronkov could be a depth center down the line, but again, we'll see. He might be more effective on the wing. The Blue Jackets have kind of an embarrassment of riches at the center position right now. So put Laine on Fantilli's wing. There's clearly some chemistry that's building there. The guys are living together. They are having just a whale of a time together. It's really fun to see. It's very much like, I've been using this analogy in a group chat that I'm in, is that it's kind of like when your older weird dog bonds with the puppy and everyone has a great time. That's kind of the vibe I get, is when your older kind of standoffish dog that doesn't really like people bonds with the new golden retriever puppy. Patrik Laine as a dog, I believe, would be a greyhound or a borzoi or something with like a long nose.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer in this, but that's beside the point. I can't get sidetracked about which Blue Jackets would be which breed of dog, because I do have a list, and maybe we'll do that in a happy hour. But
yeah, let's do that.
Having those two together, I feel like you can't pass that up just for the sake of having an extra guy that can maybe win a face-off. You know, that has to be, in my mind, that has to be plan B. Plan A has to be to exploit this chemistry that these two guys have started building, because if you get those two guys to click, like Marchenko and Gaudreau started to click at the end of last season, that's going to really make some teams' lives difficult, because how do you choose, if you have, your number one center, how do you choose between defending against a guy like Marchenko, who could basically score at will, Johnny Gaudreau, who's one of the best American players in the game, or Patrik Laine, who is a lethal shot, and Adam Fantilli, who is just is going to make teams look silly. Spread the wealth a little bit, but also I think you can't pass on the kind of chemistry that Laine and Fantilli have started to develop, because, and I will finish my point now because I realize I've been talking for a very long time here, that to me felt like when things fell apart last season was when Gaudreau and Laine got split up, because they had struggled in like maybe one or two games, and Larson was like, this isn't working, I'm going to split them up. And that to me feels like it's when the season really kind of started going off the rails. If you've got two guys that are building chemistry, leave them alone. If they have a couple of rough games, it's fine. It happens. It's hockey. Don't fall into the trap. Sorry, I'm almost done, I promise.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm going to let you cook.
Hayden's been trying to speak for like 2 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. Well, I'm going to let you cook.
Don't fall into the trap of one bad game, meaning that you need to try something new. Now I'm done.
yes. No, that was a good point. I completely agree. Don't rip up the foundation just for this. Yeah, just because you played one bad game. Like, how many times do the Blue Jackets, even in their Torts era, when they were ripping off playoff year after playoff year, how many times did they just go out, lose like 8-2? Torts just come back to the media room and was like, I'm not talking to anybody tonight. It was a bad game. See you later. Like, there's so many bad off nights in hockey that even the best teams can get beat. So yeah, don't ever overreact to a major loss. I'm kind of always checking myself as a fan in that way. Like, I'm trying not to just write off a guy because I see him play one bad shift. I tend to do that. I'm not going to lie, but I try not to. When I think of the like Patrik Laine and Adam Fantilli, I think Patrik Laine is just so good from that circle. I think he's so good covering up defensemen when he's in the defensive zone. He plays so well at wing. Like, he's just such a good winger. It's like, if it's not broke, you don't need to try to fix it. And he's so good at that position that's like, I'm cool with him staying there, especially if he's going to be playing with Adam Fantilli, who in my eyes is very good at center. Like, Adam Fantilli, the genius in Adam Fantilli is that he can make offense happen in very small areas of the ice where a loose puck is just right on his stick. He's going to get a quality shot on goal. And the most quality shots of those kind are going to happen right in front of the net, which I feel like if you're playing wing, you're not going to be down in front of the net as often. Am I correct in that? Like the wingers tend to usually hang out on the boards. I don't know. Again, this could be a Hayden doesn't know puck moment. Mark, take a drink for the day. Hayden doesn't know puck, but
You need to get stickers or something with Hayden doesn't know puck on them, and then
yeah. So that's where I'll rest this one. I feel like Fantilli was born to play center. I feel like Laine was born to play wing. Let's keep the two together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're both pretty much in agreement here of, it'd be cool, but we don't need it right now. When, I'm going to knock on wood just in case, halfway into the season when we have like 1.5 centers because everyone's got broken legs or whatever, then maybe we can revisit that. But right now, it feels like the move is these two guys play well together. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And that's kind of all we've got for today. We had a lot in that episode, I feel like. Way more than I thought that we would have going into it. But it's... that's how this game is sometimes. So we will be around on Twitter for the game. Probably I will not fall asleep during this one because it's at 3:00 in the afternoon and I'm not that old yet. But we'll be back on Monday. We'll be talking about that game. Probably we'll be talking about some more training camp cuts. I assume those will be coming over the weekend after this game, etc. And thank you for listening. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are Locked On Blue Jackets. We will remain Locked On Blue Jackets. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob Foster. I'm going to try that again. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find Hayden over at HaydenH971. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. You can email us at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Don't forget to email us proof.
Yeah, for tickets. That's why you should email us.
Proof of being subscribed to our YouTube so you can win some tickets to a game.
They're not going to be glass seats. Not going to be glass seats. Don't expect glass seats.
No, we are not made of money. The more people that subscribe, the more money we can spend on tickets for you guys. So if that is not a incentive, I don't know what is. This outro really got away from me very fast, so we're going to finish it there. Thank you guys once again for listening. We'll be back on Monday, but until then, make sure you stay locked on.